Members, we're going to have one, if it's okay with you, one adjourning motion for today. Any others we can do at Friday's session. It is with a heavy heart that I turn to Mr. Bonin at this point in time for our adjourning motion.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. I've known for a very long time that I was going to have to do this at some point, and it doesn't make it any easier. I think the only thing that makes it somewhat easy is that I think I'm feeling more numb than anything at the moment. I'm asking today that we adjourn in memory of Bill Rosendahl, who passed away this morning at about 6:30 after his 4-year battle with cancer. He was at home among friends and family, not in pain, and went very peacefully. I've known Bill for, I think, 13 years now. I was his campaign manager. I was his chief of staff for 8 years. But more than that, he was really a friend and family to me. We lived a block away, and I'd routinely get deliveries of fresh eggs and impromptu visits from Bill. And he was just a giant of a man who was filled with love and, more than anything else, I think, alive with a sense of possibility and an obligation of possibility. I used to joke with him that the scariest moment of my day was 9:20 every morning when he'd leave his home in Mar Vista and start driving to City Hall, and he'd call in with whatever his idea or plan or scheme was for the day. And it would give you a jolt because it was always something big, and I used to tell him that often it defied the laws of gravity and physics and literally the laws of California. But every day it was an idea to try to do something big, to try to help somebody. And most days, he managed to get it done. I don't know how, but he managed to get us to throw everything else away and get something big done. And he was always summoning everyone to a better possibility. He was always summoning anyone he met, to a greater possibility, to greater inspiration about what they could do with themselves and with their life. He was always looking and finding the brighter side of things. He was just all about love and about positivity and about speaking his mind. He was so bad at no, actually. There was one time early in our first year in office when tenants were being evicted from Lincoln Place in Venice. And he was routinely calling the executives at AIMCO, asking them to allow the tenants to stay. And he would get off the phone and he'd say, "Mikey, they said the tenants can stay." And I'd go in my office and I'd call the vice president at AIMCO, and they'd say, "Nope, we didn't say that." And so it got to a point where when he had a meeting with the tenants, he actually said, "I called AIMCO, here's what I asked them. I'm going to let Mikey tell you what they said." Because he just couldn't exist in that universe where there was a negative answer or no. He always wanted to live in that possibility. Bill had a very, very storied life, and most of you probably know various elements of it. He was fond of telling his story, often here. He grew up in Englewood, New Jersey. He was an aide to Eugene McCarthy on his campaign. He worked for, then switched to Robert Kennedy and was with Senator Kennedy here in California when he died. He often told the story of working for Kennedy on the Indiana primary when Kennedy asked him a few days before the votes were cast, "Am I going to win?" And Bill said no, and it was like a big deal because he had said no to the candidate and was not giving him the same info his insiders had given him. But he was here at the Ambassador Hotel that night, a fateful night. After that, Bill also worked for the George McGovern campaign, traveled on the McGovern campaign where he befriended Arlo Guthrie and Warren Beatty and a bunch of others. He also served for a couple years in the U.S. Army and spent one of those years as a psychiatric social worker at Fort Carson in Nevada, where he counseled veterans who were returning from combat in Vietnam. He also was the subject of a Life magazine cover story back in those days because he did something to boost morale and change the dynamics among the volunteers at that Army base. He worked briefly for the Carter administration, actually. He was a State Department appointee on international trade. And somewhere in the middle of that, he traveled around the world by foot, traveled Africa by foot, and visited scores of countries camping out under the stars. He came to California in the 1980s, first to San Francisco and then eventually to Los Angeles, where he began his fabled career in television broadcasting. And long before he had this job, where he said he made peanuts and he was treated like dirt by folks, he said he was Star Willie. He was the big celebrity because he hosted over the course of 17 years, 3,000 television shows about every single aspect of public affairs. Local programming, national programming, a personal best series, a perspective on the Mideast, a God Squad show. And what he used to say about it was that he would just sit back, never express his own opinions, very different than when he was on the council, never express his opinions and allow people to finish their sentences and their thoughts. And all of his shows are now archived at LMU and are an incredibly rich history of a time here in Los Angeles. Then, as we know, when he left the cable business in 2005, he joined this body. And there's a number of things he did that I can talk about, modernizing the airport and helping the homeless and fighting for affordable housing. But I'm struck less by individual legislative accomplishments than I am by just some stories that are in my head about Bill. The one that stands out most, because this was what he told me repeatedly was his proudest moment, is one most people don't know about. When Playa Vista was under construction, they discovered in the construction area, before he took office, I believe, the remains of Gabrielino Indians. And for a couple years, they were kept in boxes in storage at Playa Vista. And when Bill found that out, he was, in a word he used often, outraged. And he dedicated himself absolutely to make sure that those remains did not stay in boxes and that they were properly interred. And his proudest moment was when he joined the Gabrielino descendants for a proper burial ceremony at Playa Vista. He was so honored by that, and it really was, I think, it was, as he said, the thing that he was most proud of doing. But the thing that I think tells the most about who Bill Rosendahl was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, when Steve Lopez was doing all the columns about homelessness here in Los Angeles. Bill and a number of other elected officials and government officials, lots of folks, took a tour at night, 8 or 9 o'clock at night after dark, of Skid Row. And when they began the tour, they gave everybody rubber gloves, medical gloves. And they gave them instructions, don't touch anybody, because you might get a staph infection or get disease. Whatever you do, make sure you don't touch anybody. That pissed Bill off. And he refused the gloves. And he went around and he got down on his knees and held people by the hand and gave them a warm embrace and talked to them one-on-one. And that was so Bill Rosendahl. That was who he was. He saw the absolute dignity in everybody, whether it was a billionaire that he represented in Brentwood, or someone who was living on the streets, or someone who stood here and screamed at him every single day. We all know Bill gave away eggs. I'm so stoked that my young child got to spend 7 months having Rosendahl eggs every morning for breakfast, because it was Bill's fondest gift was to give something that was so distinctive, such a symbol of life. And he was beaming with pride every morning when he walked into this building with the 4 or 5 half-dozen cartons of eggs. And for him, giving those out was like giving out an Academy Award or a lottery prize. And he just thought it was the best thing in the world. But the other thing he gave out was hugs. And I sat through countless meetings with Bill, some pleasant, some unpleasant. But he began every meeting by hugging everyone who came into his office and hugging them when they left. And whether someone disagreed with Bill or disrespected his opinion or where he was coming from, folks invariably felt better having been in his presence. And they felt loved and respected. When my sister was sick and was dying about 5 years ago, Bill wasn't just a boss. He was like the most amazing friend in the world. For about 6 months, I was his chief of staff from a hospital room on the East Coast most of the time, flying back periodically. And he was just absolutely the greatest friend because he would love to visit people in the hospital just to share some love and a hug. Bill took people into his home all the time. Back in the 80s on Venice Beach, he took people in off the street. There was a guy, Swami X, who passed away a few months ago that we adjourned in memory of, that Bill took into his home about 20 years ago, I guess. And Bill cared for Swami. Swami got sick about 5 or 6 years ago. And Bill called friends, raised money, and provided round-the-clock care for Swami, who didn't have insurance, and made sure that Swami had the opportunity to be cared for at home and to die at home. And that's something that Bill really wanted as well. When he was diagnosed with cancer almost 4 years ago now, Bill got very morose, which was very uncharacteristic. And he was planning his funeral. And it was like a 7-day funeral with hosts of speakers and all sorts of stuff. But he was planning it out. He cashed in an annuity. He gave $100,000 away to family and friends. And he really thought he was going to go. He thought he would have passed away in August or September of 2013. And I was with him when a friend of his came over with her husband, who was a retired oncologist. And this oncologist said, "Bill, there's nothing we can do. You're going to die. Take some morphine and pass peacefully." And that's when Rosendahl kicked in. Once someone told him he was going to die, there was no way he was leaving. And he dug in, and he did everything he could. He took those hits of radiation, he took that chemo, he took the medical marijuana to feel better, and he fought like hell. And he came back, and he was in remission. And he got cancer again, and he came back, and he was in remission. And up until a few months ago, just before Christmas, he was out at events with me. We were doing events together. He was out. He was speaking at cancer events, at community events, at galas. He was just out and about because he loved being around people. And when this last bout hit him, it hit him right around the holidays, right after Christmas. He got really, really ill. And he was in the hospital in January. And the doc said, he's probably got 2 or 3 days. And God bless his family. They brought him home. And that gave him a second lease on life. Being around his chickens and being around his birds and in his home gave him a whole new burst and boost of energy. And what it gave him was the opportunity to have this incredible living wake where folks who had known him for just a few years or for a lifetime came by his bedside, sat with him, held his hand, fed him, told him stories, sang to him, shared pictures with him, and he really got to live this wake. And I could tell he enjoyed it. And there were so many of his different friends, so many of you, so many folks who visited him. And some days he was lucid, and some days he could talk. One day I was reading him the Facebook messages folks had posted, and somebody was thanking him for something in particular he'd done. And there was me and Mark Antonio Grant, a member of his staff, in the room, and he grabbed us each by the hand, and he said, "I'm so proud of the work that we were able to do." Bill is survived by his longtime partner, Hediel Colte, his brother Tom Rosendahl, and his sister-in-law Sheila, who live in Westchester, with their sons Robbie Paul, Ricky, Luke, and Arthur. His brother Stephen of Colorado, his sister Mary of North Carolina, his sister Helen of New Jersey, and his nephew and his housemate and his caregiver, Christopher Rosendahl, who has done a remarkable job taking care of Bill over the years. The funeral and memorial arrangements are still pending. Most likely there will be a massive Christian burial at St. Monica's Church in Santa Monica. And then I am going to throw one hell of a memorial service celebration of life at Mar Vista Park over one of the next couple weekends. That will be the kind of service that Bill wanted that probably couldn't fit into the liturgy of a Catholic service. In lieu of flowers, donations in his memory can be made to one of 3 homeless charities: Safe Place for Youth, which serves at-risk youth, transition-aged youth in Venice; New Directions for Veterans; and the Jeff Griffith Youth Center at the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center. I had known that Bill was sick and was dying for a very long time, So I took it as my responsibility to treat his passing as a president would treat one of his predecessors and make sure that it was fully appreciated and celebrated by the city of Los Angeles. And so we're going to have, as I said, one hell of a memorial service for him. And in the meantime, we have produced a 3-minute video tribute to Bill I'd like to play. I should set it up as follows. He had a favorite song, which I played at his bedside often over the past few weeks. And it's by some Slovenian brothers, the Brothers Erb. They're not particularly famous, but they do perform. They have an album on iTunes. And they have a song that he loves called Citizen of Sun. And Bill felt himself to be a citizen of the whole planet, a brother to all. And it's a song that he always wanted played at his memorial service, and it will be. But we set some pictures of Bill to this song, and then there's a closing quote from Bill himself.
I'm a citizen of sun. Every time I see the flowers grow, and I know they too would like me to know, I'm a citizen of sun. I'm a citizen of sun. Every time I feel that roads would call, every time they ask where do I belong at all, I'm a citizen of sun. Children of sun, having a good time on my wall, heeding my call, heeding my call, heeding my call. I'm a citizen of sun. Every time I raise a glass of wine with the friends of mine, two friends of mine, I'm a citizen of sun. Children of sun, having a good time on my wall, heeding my call, heeding my call, heeding my call. I'm a citizen of sun. Every time I see it in your eyes, even if it doesn't sound too wise, I'm a citizen of sun. I'm a citizen of sun. Every time I see it in the sky, raise your eyes if you still wonder why, I'm a citizen of sun. Citizen of sun. Every time I see it in the sky, raise your eyes if you still wonder why, I'm a citizen of sun.
The heart of Bill Rosendahl knows absolutely no bounds, and it has guided him, and it is his greatest legacy. Bill, I thank you for everything, and I absolutely love you.
But then when I came to the final moment of dealing with my situation, I came to this religion. Love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself, and don't judge. And I can tell you that's an umbrella for everybody, because all human beings have a right to have dignity and respect, and we all are family. We all are brothers and sisters. We all live together in the context of this earth. It's our earth. And if we can get along with each other and get with each other, what good is it?
Thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you, Michael. So.